Welcome back everyone to episode number 69 of the Beginner to Master Speedrun. So in case you missed the last episode, I had one of my best games yet of the speedrun. It was my 200th win, had a lot of fun sacrifices. So I'll try and keep up the exciting chess today, hopefully have some more nice games. I'm coming into today rated 2161 and yeah, gradually working towards the 2200 rating. So let's hop into the first game. Okay, first opponent playing Chess Master, who's an actual candidate master, so a title player. I'm going to play knight c3. My go-to line against the Sicilian. We'll go into a Grand Prix attack, pawn f4, looking to be aggressive. And rather than gambiting, this is more controlled aggression, where I just want to develop actively, bishop to c4, castle, and then depending what black does, I'll decide how to complete development. Most people play bishop g7 here. My opponent's decently high rated. This might be one of my highest rated opponents yet of the speedrun. And of course, if I win, then my opponent will get their rating refunded. I'm going to go for pawn d4 here. And this is actually a temporary gambit, because there are 3 attackers, only 2 defenders. The point in this line is I have knight to b5, so ready to recapture. And this will resemble probably more of an open Sicilian, because, yeah, the center is a bit more open now. Queen b6. So black is guarding the d-pawn, but surrendering the other d-pawn. I think I just take with check, and then pawn e5. I think that was just a careless blunder on my opponent's part. I mean, this is a trade of pawns, but the fact that black is going to lose castling rights, pawn e5 will come. It's looking really nice for white. And the knight will just stay on d6 when it's guarded by the pawn. I like to call this the octopus knight, having 8 tentacles. Yeah, pawn e5. I'm not really scared of pawn d3, just king h1. Pawn's not really doing much damage. I guess there is f6. I mean, worst case scenario, I can take on c8. Not really a move I want to play, but it's nice to have such a move in my back pocket. Pawn f6 is played. So now what to do? Looking at b3 and bishop a3 is kind of interesting. This might get tactical, because after takes, the knight is a bit looser. If I take on c8 first, some trades. Just taking a moment here to look for other options. I'm going to calculate b3, pawn takes pawn, bishop a3, threatening the discovered fork. Black has to react. I guess there is knight b4, but then the knight is pinned. I could take, and then take back the pawn. Should be fine. So b3 takes bishop a3. And then black will somehow defend against the threat. Maybe king d8? No, but king d8, knight f7. It's not easy for black to defend. Yeah, I'm just going to go for b3. It does feel a little bit slow, but the prospect of bishop a3 looks really problematic for black. Bishop a3. And I am temporarily down a pawn, but the center is opening up. King d7, so there's this x-ray vision, e6 is a target. I'm a little bit curious about takes knight g5. A lot of juicy lines to calculate. King goes back, queen g4, king c7, knight e8. Oh, it might be mating. I definitely want to slow down here. I could also just take back. I could start with knight g5. I could play knight f7. Spoiled for choice. Yeah, I don't want to burn too much time. This might be the simplest move. Just maintain all the goodness in the position. I mean, knight f7 I think is a bit too materialistic. I want to keep the knight here. Let's spend a moment. Bishop takes e6, king takes e6, knight g5. King d5, it's mate because en passant is not legal. So takes. I think the king would have to move back to d7. This was what I was originally calculating. Queen g4. King d8, I have knight gf7. And if king c7... Yeah, I thought this might be too messy. I guess knight e8, king d8, my queen's attacked. It might be too messy. So takes. I sack a bishop. I check here. Knight e8, king d8. Feels so close. Knight f7, king takes e8. I don't want to be in a spot where I sack and then run out of steam. I'm just going to take back. And we'll see what black does here. And if knight e7, which looks like the most natural move, I could still calculate these lines. Takes, knight g5. King goes back, e6. Again, the position is so nice that there should be like multiple ways to get the job done. Like now takes in rook f7. And where is the king going? To c6? And if bishop takes, rook f7, knight e7, I can take, sack the rook, and then discover fork. Bishop is so nice at supporting the knight, generating tactics. Maybe king d8 is the only try. Because king c6, queen f3 is mate, controlling all the squares around the king. Okay. Nice game to start the episode. 16 moves against a candidate master. I mean, they just kind of blundered one move in the opening. Queen b6 just gives a d pawn, and it was pretty difficult for black to fight back. But b3 was a nice find to play bishop a3 and keep the pressure on and maintain the knight on d6. So I don't think there's much to analyze. Maybe I can give a little bit more insight into this opening. I did give a lecture on the Grand Prix attack many years ago for the St. Louis Chess Club, which I can link below. But I'm pretty sure in that lecture I covered the move pawn d3, which is basically the old main line and going for the more standard Grand Prix attack ideas. But pawn d4 is a more modern move. It's super sharp. It's covered by chessmood.com. Link below if you want a discounted Chessmood membership. But there's a nice trap here that if black takes with the knight on d4, white can play bishop e3, takes, and even though white's down a pawn, position is just much, much better for white with f5 coming and the half-open d-file. And there's a line knight e7, still f5, and if takes, whatever takes back, there's going to be g4, and f7 is a target. So it's a fun opening. A lot of cases where black can get into a lot of trouble early on, as we saw in this game. So I'm up to 2171. Let's keep it going, and we'll do another. Okay, next opponent, playing Nisa 54. Again, let's play e4. Try and be aggressive yet again. Maybe another Grand Prix attack. d6, okay. Is there any chance my opponent saw my previous game? I'll play the same line. A slightly different move order. But if we see knight c6 and e6, it will be a transposition. Knight f6. So this is a little bit different. In this line, I'm going to castle, and without black committing to e6, then I think it makes less sense to go for this d4 idea, especially with the bishop on g4. The first thing that comes to mind here is, I guess, bishop takes f7, I should calculate, but the bishop's defended by the knight on f6. So the next thing that comes to mind is pawn e5. And maybe there's tactics. Takes e5 and then takes. Takes, I take, it's a fork. And discovery. And if black takes first, I take back with queen. I'm hitting the knight and the pawn. It might get messy, because after takes, there's queen d4 hitting my king and bishop. So what am I concerned about? e5. If takes right away, I'll have an option between taking on e5 or f7. And if takes, I could take on b7. That looks pretty good. Takes on e5, queen d4, king h1, takes. I'm calculating the line where my king goes to h1, I lose a bishop, I win the knight, and I think I win b7 in the very end there. So let's go for e5. The aggression continues. And if the knight moves away here, let's say knight d7, I can take on f7, and then go for this tactic, knight g5, and the bishop would be undefended. So we'll see what black does. That's very common in this opening, especially in the Grand Prix setup, where bishop g4 is just not a good move, because it can get victimized by these bishop f7 tactics, or even sometimes h3. I think in this case, I just want to take on f7. And knight on h5 is probably going to be misplaced. Okay, king to f8. So black is not allowing me to get this move in. Still want to consider ideas of knight g5 to e6. Probably safest is just to move the bishop back. There's also pawn e6 here, cementing the bishop on f7. So a few choices. I kind of like bishop to b3. The drawback of pawn e6, even though it looks nice, it traps in my own bishop. Also gives this knight a square to come back to. With bishop b3, I really want to open the f-file eventually, like h3, take, f5. So yeah, this looks solid. And I'm not really concerned about black taking. I mean, even though the knight's pinned, if takes, I can take and unleash the rook and then win the bishop. Now I'm wondering about knight g5 here, because it could lead to the queen trade. I lose a queen, I check, I win back a queen. Also looking at h3. h3, there's takes, and knight d4. But then maybe queen d5. Yeah, I don't want to overthink this. h3 looks really nice. And maybe the other knight can come into g5. And there's also knight d4 and queen takes b7. I'm also threatening g4. So 11 moves in. Life is good. Black does go for knight d4. So do I want to win a pawn, or do I want to threaten checkmate? If I threaten mate, I think knight takes b3 would be likely. There's also e6. But then we could trade queens. I'm going to start with queen d5. Because e6, I really don't mind the queen trade. And I also don't mind losing the bishop. Take back, open the a file. Knight g3. So the rook is attacked. Probably rook f3. Hitting the knight. If knight f5, then g4. Knight is hopping around. I guess g4, knight h4. Rook would move. I'm just looking for the most convincing path forward. And there's knight e4. Like knight e4, knight g5 would be quite nice looking. I'm calculating knight e4 takes. We trade queens. I take back, and I'm threatening g4 and a7. Up a pawn. Okay, let's go for knight e4. Always got to be careful with putting the pieces smack in the center. But the pieces harmonize really nicely. The rook playing a role from a1. I was just wondering about pawn takes pawn and rook takes a7. Just a crazy thought. Sack a queen, rook takes a8. Not sure if that would have worked. Okay, knight d4, I probably should have seen coming. I think I can respond with knight g5. Sacrifice the rook for knight. But in the resulting position, I'm threatening mate and I'm threatening the fork. And I don't see how Lac defends. So takes, takes. If queen e8, I play knight e6. And then the king will have to step into a discovery. Maybe there's king g8. Knight f7, queen f7. Black goes for e6, but now I can take. Winning another pawn. We trade knights. Okay, black is offering the queen trade. So I could win a third pawn. I mean, usually when you're up material, you should trade, but I also want to just finish off the mating attack. Queen d5 is definitely an option. Probably just a matter of choosing something and playing it quickly. There's also f5. f5, pawn takes pawn. Any tactics there? Bishop g5. Oh, actually f5 threatens to take with check. I'm going to go for this. Finally trying to make use of the rook aligned with the king. Because if takes takes king e7, I have rook f7 winning the bishop. And if black takes on e5, I take with check. I guess black could try takes takes and king here or here. But then I take on d6 and I have two pawns in black's territory. Now this looks pretty forcing. Takes. After king e8, I can take and then win the bishop. Okay, so now it's cleanup time. Up a bishop and how many pawns? And a pawn. A bishop and two pawns, actually. Make it 3. And at this point, I'm just trying to win efficiently, okay? Opponent resigning is probably the most efficient way. So that was 27 moves. Again, got a very nice position from this Grand Prix attack. Slightly different line than the first game, but we see the venom of white setup And after e5, it's already good for white, according to Stockfish. Bishop g4 was actually just a mistake, even though it looks like a natural developing move. Generally in this line, black should just develop the knight and castle first before touching the bishop. And this would be very playable. Like if knight c6, d3, castle, I'd probably go for queen e1, queen h4, and very often black can go for queenside play with a6, b5, or knight a5, sometimes knight to d4 as well. And it would be more of a fight. But yeah, after e5 and takes f7, I think it's quite smooth. So, okay, a couple quick games, up to 2178. Let's do another. Am I going to be white for a third time in a row? No, I'm black. Playing Zarif Taz. I'll play e5. You know what? I'm in a pretty aggressive mood. Let's play knight f6, and if knight takes e5, I'll play a Stafford Gambit. I have not played the Stafford as black yet in the speedrun, but I want to have some fun. Opponents slowing down a little bit. Opponents from Bangladesh. I have played against the Stafford a few times this speedrun, and punished my opponents for playing a dubious opening. d4 is a very fine move here. Actually, d4 is an annoying move to meet because it's hard to get an aggressive line against this. Now, there are still a few ideas. I can take, and take on e4. Then bishop d3. Black does get a little bit passive there. There's also knight takes e4, queen e2, queen e7. How crazy do I want to be? I'll go for this line. Takes on e5. I think there's still some active potential here. And very often I'll look to play d6, maybe even sometimes d5. In this case, I think I have to play knight c5. Queen h4 might be an option. I haven't actually encountered this line recently, so just want to get a playable position. Queen h5, queen h4, there's castling. And then the issue is queen f3, and yeah, the setup is a bit unstable. And after d5, I don't really want to allow takes, and then queen trade where I lose castling rights. So I'll play knight c5. Maybe try and get the bishop pair. And white is allowing knight takes d3. And now d6. Now I'm feeling pretty good. I think white maybe should have played bishop c4 to maintain light squared bishop. Because now I have the bishop pair in a pretty open position. White has the isolated d-pawn, and I have no issues at all. Castle, have a safe king, maybe generate some attack on the king side. There is a cute tactic here. Let's start with bishop to f5. And let's say knight f3. I think I can take on d3. Because after it takes, I win the queen. Oh no, my bishop. I think white has to play rook e1. Rook e1, maybe bishop to b4. So I win a pawn. Bishop to b4, bishop d2. I don't think I want to trade bishops. Like, even though I'm up a pawn, the bishop pair is just so nice in an open position. I could leave my bishop on d3 and play queen d7. Could also just retreat. Yeah, I'll just retreat. Safety first. And very soon I'll look to improve my queen and rooks. White hits a b7 pawn. I was just looking at queen f6, queen takes b7, rook b8 to try and win back b2. It's probably worth covering or defending this pawn. But rook b8, there's bishop a7. Yeah, queen b3 is a little bit annoying. And queen c8, then the rook is a bit trapped in. I guess there's b6. b6, there's knight d4. Am I scared about this move? If knight d4, then the king side's a bit looser. Yeah, I think it's worth playing b6. Because this also undermines white's dark squared bishop. So there's less issues with the bishop attacking my queen side. And maybe queen f6 now. Queen f6, the bishop hits the queen. Queen f5. Looks pretty good. Yeah, my rooks are a little bit slow to enter the game, but white's not really having any threats here. Position is very solid for black. Maybe I can play bishop to h5 very soon. Okay, so white goes for bishop g5. Yeah, queen f5 looks fine. The queen might get kicked around. There is rook d5. And then maybe queen g4, queen c2, or queen d7. It is nice having options. And of course, when I get the chance, I want to play rook to e8, challenge the open center file, maybe generate some threats on the back rank. White goes for bishop e7. Interesting. So takes. Definitely a logical approach from white. I'm looking at a tactical idea. Takes, and then queen c5, threatening the rook and threatening bishop c2. I could also just maybe play rook e8, and after takes, still up a pawn. So I don't really like the idea of white's rook coming to the 7th rank. Yeah, rook e8. And bishop e7 was a good move. I do have to watch my back rank as well. After takes... Yeah, I think I'll start with rook takes e1. And then take back. Wow, knight takes. Honestly forgot about that move. I think I'm losing back the pawn. I also conceded the bishop pair. Have to take. White's gonna take queen e5. There's rook d1 or even queen d1. And then rook e8. I mean, I think black is still slightly better here because it's bishop versus knight in an open position, and the knight's a bit misplaced on e1. But I misplayed it at some point. Maybe I should not have allowed bishop e7. Yeah, rook d1. Okay, now where to put my rook? Because knight f3 is coming. I could maybe start with bishop h5, but then still knight f3. Rook e8. Maybe just start with like h5 or h6. What about this move? Bishop. I'm also looking at queen c5. I'm going to play queen c5. I wasn't sure where to put my rook between e8 and c8. And I just don't want the knight to develop with tempo. There might be knight d3 here. I think the knight is not super harmonious with other pieces. And I'm trying to set up some eventual bishop to c2. So maybe now, rook e8, there's queen a4. Okay, I'll just play h6. A flexible move. And now, there's queen d5. I don't have bishop c2. I could play it. Queen d5. We trade bishop e4. I don't think I'm better there, though. Maybe rook e8 first. I gotta move quicker, too. Bishop c2, queen d5, we trade. Rook's a little bit passive. Rook e8, queen. Maybe rook e8, queen a4, rook e7. I'll try this. Kind of risky. So I'm allowing this move. The idea is to play rook e7, allow rook d8, king h7. And my king should be safe there. There might be queen h4 threatening mate. But at the same time, I have ideas of checking. Okay, I think white just blundered bishop c2. Yeah, this is what I wanted to do the previous move. But the problem the previous move was queen d5 hit the rook. Now that my rook's on e8, the queen can't really move to attack it effectively. Queen a4, I still take the queen. And it's nice my queen is defended by my pawn, because after rook c1, I take and win the rook. So now life is very good. I just want to simplify. Can I win a pawn? Queen b4. Queen b4 attacks the knight, the pawn, and threatens to win the queen. So knight f3 saves the knight and the queen, but loses the pawn. Queen d7 would counterattack the rook, but then I have check, and then queen takes knight. Or even check, and then mate eventually. Okay, this should be plenty of time to win. I'll look for ways to simplify. Just queen c1 first. And I'm giving back a pawn, but if queen takes a7, I have queen b8 check. Make life easier. So white was probably aware of that. I'll play rook d8. I want to try and force a queen trade. If white keeps avoiding it, then I'll probably go after this pawn or even this pawn. Okay, now I can force a queen trade. Let's not play rook d2. Let's play rook d3. Don't want to blunder a rook. Go after this pawn. And these pawns. And why not sack the rook? Get rid of the knight. The king is going to catch the pawn. Pawn will come to b4. And now the other pawns will advance. Just have to be careful not to stalemate. Okay. Nice game. Definitely more of a fight than the first two games. I wanted to play a Stafford Gambit. Got the starting position of the Stafford Gambit. Opponent played d4, which is a very playable line for white. Engine says white is definitely better here, plus 0.7. Taking is still the best move, which Engine says is plus 1.5. I would have been more excited to enter this line, though. And then what happened in the game after d4 takes, bishop d3? Yeah, white should probably just save the bishop, and the knight's a little bit awkward here. White controls more space, is ready to castle. After bishop e3, then yeah, I just had a nice position, was able to win the d3 pawn. Now I do want to look at the moment coming up after bishop e7. Do I have any way to avoid this? Or maybe queen f6 was not the best move. Yeah, queen f6 gave white this resource. The engine prefers queen c8, which looks a little bit more passive, but it doesn't allow the bishop to come to e7 immediately, and also the queen can come maybe to g4, maybe even a6. After bishop e7, yeah, I definitely lost most of my advantage in this sequence. Engine says I should take, and queen c5, which I was looking at, threatening the rook and threatening this. Rook to e1. As black is holding on to the extra pawn here. What happened in the game, I just lost the pawn. I forgot the knight could move backwards to recapture. And this is very close to equal. But I think it was still more pleasant to play with the bishop. And eventually my opponent fell victim to this tactic. Yeah, after queen d5, it's anyone's game. Engine says, yeah, best move is takes. And it's minus 0.1 in black's favor. So yeah, it would have took a lot more work to win this position. So up to 2185. Had some fun games today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Stay tuned. Nice, oh nice, nice, really nice, nice looking, nice game.